G'day everyone, welcome back to Off the Land with Rob. I had to wait a full week before I could record this video because I was so incensed I couldn't think straight and I couldn't write anything that didn't sound off the wall anyway. So today we're just diving into broken promises and Anthony Albanese's favourite line, "My word is my bond," but it doesn't look like his bond is worth anything. Hang on. This is Molly. Say hello. Albo and Chalmers, they promised, in Albo's own words, dozens of times leading up to both of the last two elections that changes to capital gains tax and negative gearing were categorically off the table.
So let's start off with trying to get some clarity because investors do need it. Will you guarantee that you won't touch negative gearing and capital gains tax concessions?
Well, we have no plans to touch or change negative gearing.
His actual comment was, yes, for the 50th time, yes, it's off the table. All right, but here we are. Both negative gearing and capital gains have been changed. Apparently it wasn't a lie, it was just a position change. Pretty funny how that works. I mean, if I changed my position like that, I'd definitely be called a liar. And it's all been sold in the name of generational equity. God, I hate that word equity. It doesn't mean lifting up everyone to equality. It means taking from the haves and giving to the have-nots, or wealth distribution. Negative gearing is grandfathered for those that already have it. So if you've got a negative gearing property, nothing's going to change for you. Of course it doesn't, because 22 out of 24 of Albo's cabinet members, including himself, own properties that are negatively geared. So they're certainly not going to miss out, but the future guys are. CGT discount hasn't actually been scrapped, but it's been drastically changed and almost impossible to understand now by the average person. But in the end, it has been drastically reduced. So for those of you guys that don't understand all of this, and of course I'm not completely across it because I'm not an accountant either, I just want to break it down and just put it up there really, really simply. A negatively geared property is a property where the rent that they charge doesn't cover the outgoing costs. So let's say you get $700 a week in rent, but your costs, your mortgage, your rates, your water, your strata, repair costs, etc., they cost $1,000 a week. So that's a $250 a week loss, or about $13,000 a year. And you think, well, why would you do that? Well, because the loss comes straight off your income. So if you're a high earner, someone who's on plus $150,000, $180,000 a year, and you're paying the 45% tax rate in the top tax section, you can get thousands of dollars back from your tax relief because that $13 comes off the top of your income. So you can get like $5,800 back. And you still get the capital growth. And for the last bunch of years, that's sort of been 5 to 10% a year. So if you own $1 million property that you're renting out to somebody, your capital growth can be $100,000 a year of growth. So that's a sort of a small loss, that $8,000 or $10,000 that you're losing in your negatively gear, for a massive long-term gain of $100,000 a year. Let's keep that for 20 years. That's $2 million, and it's going to cost you what, 10 grand a year? So that's $200,000. Sounds pretty good to me. It's an easy decision for many to make when they go into a property. But then you get capital gains as well. So this growth is called a capital gain. And when you sell, you have to pay a capital gains tax. So basically, if 20 years ago you bought a property in Sydney for $500,000 and you sold it today and got $2 million for that property, you would have got $1.5 million worth of capital growth. All right. The capital tax is 30%. So your capital gains bill is going to be $450,000 out of that $2 million settlement has to go straight to Albo and Jim. Governments previously gave mums and dads a 50% discount onto that because, you know, that 450 is not really a fair thing. So if your property was worth less than $5 million, so you weren't some giant corporation, you got a discount of 50%. So that $450,000 you owed the government is now only $225,000. For both elections, Albo promised and promised and promised that he would never touch that. But now he has. So now his bond is worthless. I know that's a really simplified explanation of and the full rules are so much more complex that even if I was an accountant, it'd be a 3-hour video trying to explain it. But that's the general gist of what's happening and what these things mean. So you ask the question, I haven't got a rental property. Why does that affect me? Well, fantastic question. First, I need someone to explain to me how letting current owners, including most of Albo's cabinet, to keep negative gearing while stopping young people from doing the same, how is that generational equity? They can do it, you can't, but apparently that's equal. More than 50% of rental properties are owned by mum and dad investors, not the big corporations. So how does stopping the next generation from entering that market help the young people build wealth? Well, the answer is, of course, they can't. If you can't get ahead, then you can't get ahead. Because if a new investor can't negative gear a property, they will have to positively gear the property. So that means they're going to have to charge enough rent to, one, make a profit, and they, two, cover that profit is going to have to cover all their expenses plus the future tax that they're now going to pay because they don't have the capital gains exemption that, well, I mean, not me, but most people who own rental properties have. By the way, I don't own a rental property. So this isn't directly affecting me like that, but I still understand that how it's going to affect me in the world and how it's going to affect my kids. So rents are going to rise when these new people get into the investment market, if they get in. And many people are predicting they're going to have to put the rents up by 20%. What do your kids think about having a 20% rent increase? How will these young people afford to save for their home whilst another 20% of their income has to go to the person who already owns this home that they're living in? How do these kids build generational wealth when the ability to do it has been stripped from them? It just smells like wealth distribution to me. Tearing down the successful to make everybody equal. That's classic equity, not equality. Equity does not build people up. Equity drags the top down to be the same as the bottom. Just remember that is the truth of equity. And it's going to cause a corporate takeover. If mum and dad investors are pushed out, who's going to step in? Well, obviously BlackRock, Vanguard, the super funds that already own the other sort of major portion of it that the mum and dads don't currently own. So that's going to halve the competition. And I think this is where they try to get at it, saying, oh, if it halves the competition, it's going to either reduce prices or at least plateau them. And while that's going to be true for a little while, what's going to happen in the long term? We risk corporate-owned rental ghettos where profit matters before people. When BlackRock owns a property, they don't care. As long as the property earns the money, they don't care what it looks like, how it looks like, or who even lives there. They're just going to have to charge higher rents because they can. And when they finally got a domination on rental properties and who owns them, they are in control of the prices. Make no mistake, when you give BlackRock the keys to everything, BlackRock owns everything, BlackRock charges everything. The price they set is the price they set, and you've just got to cop it. And this whole thing is just part of the latest multi-term plan that all of these politicians on both sides have been lying to us about for decades. This is the culmination of their long-term plan. I remember, I'm old enough to remember, when superannuation became compulsory. They promised that legislation would be written in so future governments couldn't touch it. That was the first super lie. But now Albo has made super rule changes. Oh, but only to the rich, people who have super over $3 million. Yeah, we've seen that. You promised not to change CGT, but you changed it. Promised not to do it anyone except people who are rich and have more than $3 million in super. Yeah, we know where that leads. We've seen where that leads. And we've seen where Albo can't keep a promise to save his life. Remember when he promised $275 power bill reductions by 2025? Because of his climate policies, we're going to save the world and make power cheaper. Well, that hasn't happened. My bills are hundreds higher than they were when he got in. It's like this climate bill that he's put in for $275 cheaper power. It's like every other climate hoax prediction that's been around, since I know of it in the 80s. You know, no ice by 2015, no polar bears by 2016. Every major coastal city in the world is going to be flooded by 1999. That's what we were told in the 80s. I'm still waiting for one of these things to happen. I haven't seen any. And just to top it off, Albo's $275 cheaper power because renewables are cheaper to run. Another lie in the climate hoax. Rubbish. None of them come true. Remember when he first got in, the Coalition and Labor had a bipartisan bill about 3-stage tax cuts. And I said at the very beginning, it's because they're making 3 stages because they're going to kill one of them and just drop out. And remember, there was a tiny tax cut, a middle-sized tax cut, and apparently a huge tax cut as stage 3. Well, as soon as Albo got in, stage 3 out the window, start again. So he's now promising $250 in 2028 or something to offset these massive expenses. But like those stage 3 tax cuts, they'll disappear by 2028. And remember when he promised to cut immigration to pre-pandemic levels? Well, pre-pandemic levels was about 180,000 people a year. Why are we still at 300? It's been years, Albo, and they keep coming in. I know why they're still going up. Because immigration is great for the GDP, the gross domestic product. Because if you increase the population, there's more consumption. So if you put 10% more people in the system, they're going to spend 10% more money, and therefore the economy is going to grow, and it's going to look great on paper for him. Who cares about what really happens in the long term? Most economists warn that we would be in a recession by now had we not had this immigration growth. So we're not really growing. We are adding consumers who are spending the same as before, but because there's more of them, we total more. I hope that makes sense. And just before he got in last time, or before he got in originally, he always promised, vote for me and you'll get open, honest, transparent government. Now, requests for freedom of information coming out of the Albanese government are denied at 75%, where they were denied at only 30% under the coalition. So where's the transparency? A few more recent examples. Just before the Bondi jihadi attack, Annika Wells was under tremendous pressure to resign because of her rorting of the travel system. She kept coming on TV, I did nothing wrong, I was always within the rules, I was always within the rules. I reckon I saw that on TV every night for about 3 or 4 weeks, that Annika Wells was standing up in front of the media and saying, I did nothing wrong. But an audit found she did do something wrong, and she's had to pay back $10,000 for breaking the rules. What had happened If your boss caught you rorting the system or stealing $10,000, would you have a job? If you're management, would you still be management? I mean, the very least, would they boot you further down the system? And now we get on to the ISIS bride. 4 more ISIS bride and 9 more children have arrived back in Australia. Albo said the reports were not accurate, but they're back now, aren't they? Have you noticed how he never said they weren't coming back? How he always just said the reports about them coming back are inaccurate. He never denied it. He just said, your reporting is inaccurate. So thinking back, I'm pretty sure that was a lie. Tony Burke, he says, oh, but what we're going to do is we're going to look after them and we're going to put these kids into de-radicalisation centres, or de-radicalisation re-education camps would be another appropriate word. Does that sound familiar to anybody? Berkey also said, no, ISIS brides, you're doing it all wrong, no. But he met with a bloke several times. He even asked the room to be cleared at one point so we could talk to this doctor who managed to get 35 Australian passports out of Australia into Syria to give to these brides. Now, how does that happen without government help? How does that happen? I went and picked my passport up. I had to show 3 forms of ID at the post office to pick my passport up. How does this guy pick up 35 spare passports of somebody else's without help from the government? Somebody knew he was doing it. Somebody gave him permission to pick those things up. Somebody gave him permission to remove Australian passports from Australia that don't belong to him. That just doesn't add up to me. No government help? Sure. And Albo's defence for it all? No, not lies. The reports were just wrong. He never actually denied it. The reports were just wrong. And when the reports were just wrong doesn't cover it, my position's changed. Our position's changed. We've decided. No, you lied in the first place because you had no intention of keeping those promises. And even if you did intend keeping those promises, bud, you made a promise. It's right and proper, if you say your word is your bond, to keep your promises. I mean, it's sort of like me promising when I got my license that I would adhere to the speed limit. But now I've just changed my position and I'm going to drive at 200 kilometres an hour everywhere because my position has changed. Luckily, people are waking up. Since the budget's come out, the polls for Labor have dropped. They've dropped from 32% to 29%. They're now under 30% favourability. And that's a big swing. 32 to 29 is a 3% swing. 3 out of 10, out of 32 is almost a 10% swing against Labor. 10% swing against. I'm pretty sure people are waking up. I often get told that I only have a bag Labor and, it's my fault, but, the coalition aren't out of it. Angus Taylor, or as I like to call him, AT, he came out with his budget reply that all non-citizen policy benefits will be scrapped. And so if you're not a citizen, you're not going to get any sort of welfare from Australia. NDIS, pensions, the works, all right? Not 24 hours later, he's backwalked that one real fast. Mind you, Labor haven't stopped their lies about what he's doing, and they're all trotting out their usual lies about AT and his policies as well. Look, you all know, I'm done with both major parties. You all know who I vote for. Well, you should. You've seen my orange hat in enough videos, I think. I just hope that next election you think about it too. I'm not telling you to vote for who I vote for. Your vote is your vote. But think about who you're voting for and what lies they're putting out and what lies. Just do a little bit of research. And when you're voting, vote below the line on that big Senate paper so your vote goes to who you want to, your preferences. So if your guy doesn't get in, that party doesn't decide where your preference goes. Put it below the line and make your vote count. Anyway, all of these things I like to finish on a bit of a brighter note. I don't know if you can hear, and even though this has been a grumpy video, I've had a bit of a smile on my face, I think, because it's actually raining and it's actually starting to get quite heavy right now. Many of you have messaged me over the last month or two saying how brown it's got back here from that lush green it was just a couple of months ago, because it hasn't rained. We're down about 400 millimeters for the year. But out of the blue, literally, it's finally raining. The BOM has only promised me 6 millimeters because they told me it wasn't going to rain again till Christmas. But my Rain Parrot app, it says 36 mil. So I'm hoping if we just get somewhere in the middle, 18, 20 mil, God, I'll be happy. Because rain brings rain. And it's just the way it is. So we got, 5 mil a week or so ago. And then now we're having a 30 mil event. So it's just proof rain does bring rain, and it just proves it can rain again. And if we get a couple more 30 mil showers over the course of winter, the grass might just grow a little bit. We might get a little bit of green pick happening through my brown paddocks, and it's just going to help me get through winter and make my cows a bit happier, and they might get through winter and keeping a bit of condition on. Anyway, again, I'm Rob. Thanks for listening to Off the Land with Rob. This is a podcast and a YouTube video. So whether you're on the podcast or the YouTube, please drop me a comment. Tell me what you think of the video. Tell me what I should cover next. What would you like to hear? And please like, share, and do those things that help my channel grow and get me out there, because I appreciate every single person that ever watches me, especially those who decide to jump on board and tell me what they think, good or bad. But most of all, guys, as always, be safe out there. Thanks for watching.